It was the worst story in Spider-Man comics history, the worst event in Spider-Man history, although modern incidents have actually challenged that claim. I first started to read Spider-Man comics partially in the early 1990s. The animated series actually brought me and my whole generation into the Spider universe. I remember older fans absolutely hating the stories. I remember so much from that time, and I even have some of the clone issues myself. Not fully learning the extent of the damage until the late 1990s, it sort of turned me off from Spider-Man comics. To this day, I only buy paperbacks of certain runs rather than buy new Spider-Man comics, because of fears I might waste my money on utter rubbish like so many of us did back then. But the concept of the clone, Ben Reilly, was something I thought was interesting. That's why I've spent time on the internet reading through comic information websites about the clone. We even have readers now who were not even alive when the Clone Saga was first penned. This narration is on the Spider clone, Ben Reilly. Entry 1. Warped Origins. The clone dates back far more than 1994 when the whole Clone Saga started, but in fact in 1975. Amazing Spider-Man issue 149, the story was that of a villain of Spider-Man, the Jackal, revealed that he in fact created a clone of Peter Parker. Confused of the situation, the both of them fight. Realizing that neither is the true enemy, they stop and team up. This is not long, as an explosion appears to kill one of them. The one that's still alive throws the body of the dead one down a smokestack, seemingly in the hopes that no one would ever find the body. The next few issues have this Peter Parker, this Spider-Man, wondering if he's the real one. Because of his love for Mary Jane, in which started before the clone appeared, he believed that this was enough for him to be considered the real Peter Parker. That's it. Nothing more. Just a crazy story from the Silver Age of comics. Things like that happened all the time, but taking the story like that and expanding it, making it even more confusing and even worse, was yet to come. In the early 1990s, bad writing had seriously begun to affect the Spider-Man titles. Peter's best friend Harry Osborn had recently died after trying to kill Peter. His once dead parents had returned, and Peter was on the verge of accepting them back into his life as they were revealed to be pawns created by the Chameleon and Osborn. Driving Peter insane, he actually began to believe that he was Spider-Man and Peter Parker was the alias. Readership dipped slightly, but this was nothing for what was yet to come. In 1994, Aunt May had gone into a coma and a mysterious person wanted to see her. This person had been in the comics before, clearly hints of someone. Aunt May might possibly die and this unknown wanted to see her before she did. Spectacular Spider-Man issue 216. Spider-Man had been accused of attacking an innocent man. He had a zero-tolerance policy of criminals due to Uncle Ben being murdered by one. Spider-Man has a confrontation with the Scorpion near the hospital. Later on, there's a panel with Peter Parker at the hospital with Aunt May. As he's talking to her, a nurse notices something outside. Peter looks and sees Spider-Man swinging by. Astonished by this, he races to the roof and runs right into Spider-Man. New readers don't know what's going on. Older readers who are still around know what this means. The first clone arc was Power and Responsibility, which ran through the key Spider-Man comic lines at the time. For new readers, it brought them into the concept of Spider-Man having a clone, and to remind older readers what had happened nearly 20 years before by 1994. Both old and new readers alike were given the backstory for what the clone had done all that time. This so-called genesis of Spider-Man had things pick up after the explosion in 1975. The clone woke up to find where the original had left him. Dazed and mentally destroyed, he wanted to see his friends and family. Vision's all he cared about. Remembering where his apartment was, the clone saw the real Peter and Mary Jane holding each other. Believing that everything his was now not, he left. There was nothing for him now. He grieved the loss of everything. Web of Spider-Man, issue 117. The clone and Spider-Man fight each other. Spider-Man immediately thinks that this is some mad plot by another foe and goes insane once more. The clone, not desiring any of this, isn't up for a battle and is easily defeated. At the same time, Dr. Judas Traveler and his followers enter Ravencroft Hospital. Traveler, a new character, is obsessed with the nature of evil. Traveler goes to the different holding rooms, meets a few villains, and finds a common trait. They all have a hatred for Spider-Man. Traveler takes control of Ravencroft. At the time, no one really knew what purpose Traveler had in the Spider-Man comics. Such a character felt out of place. To this day, the character has mostly mixed reactions from readers. The clone escapes, but Spider-Man is unable to go after him. Traveler says he will kill everyone inside Ravencroft if Peter doesn't stop him, but if Peter wins, the inmates go free. Having no choice, Spider-Man goes after Traveler. Amazing Spider-Man issue 394. The clone has visions of his so-called memories. Back in Ravencroft, Spider-Man faces old villains. Dazed, each dealing with their own demons, Peter finally confronts Traveler. He dives into Spider-Man's mind and as he spouts insane ramblings that even Spider-Man can't understand. This is the first glimpse into something possibly more than a fight with a clone. Spider-Man strikes back, but it's too much for him and he's overcome. Traveler informs his mysterious ally Squeer that there is yet another one. The clone, after speaking with Aunt May in the hospital, is given an offer by Traveler. He can let the real Spider-Man die and have the life he's always wanted, or gamble with his own life and help the real one whose death would actually be a good thing for him. Mary Jane also decides to return home to repair things with Peter and the clone, and has a close moment with Aunt May. It's noticed that the clone is fake, but the concern for Aunt May is real. Spider-Man issue 51. The clone is still in the hospital with May, deciding what to do with the choice given to him by the Traveler. He decides on a name. Ben Reilly. Ben, after the memory of Uncle Ben, and Reilly after Aunt May's maiden name. Ben understands there was never a choice. He is Peter Parker, clone or not, and decides on trying to save him. He departs with May a final thought. Quote, "The memories I have of you have made my life seem real." End quote. He puts on an extra mask, gloves, and web shooters and heads off to help Peter, still wearing regular clothes. Spider-Man nearly goes completely mad, dealing with everything in his life subconsciously, but then he remembers that with great power must come great responsibility. Ben realizes the exact same thing at the exact same moment. Ben and Peter fight their battles. Oddly, they both have their masks torn during the fight. Ben for real, Peter during his brink with madness. The imagery could be something shown to readers for what might be there to come. The story ends with Ben arriving to help Peter before any more damage can be done by Traveler. Spectacular Spider-Man issue 217. Traveler is interested by the situation of Ben and Peter, the one that would abandon everything and the one that wants to live. Traveler changes the setting and watches the two Spider-Man and waits for the result. Peter thinks of Ben as another attempt by Traveler to drive him mad. Ben believes the same thing and remarks to his lack of humor and calls him Parker. Peter hates that and remarks that he's Spider-Man. Before the both can continue their fighting, the villains are released from Ravencroft and the Spider-Men need to stop fighting with each other and deal with the new situation. Ben deals with some of the prisoners while Peter lashes out. Again, Peter nearly goes insane. Ben stops Peter before he completely goes insane. Slowly, Peter comes back from the brink of madness. Both team up and take down Carnage. Traveler and his followers try to escape and Ben goes after them, following them to no avail as a bomb explodes. Traveler is gone and Ben is believed to be dead, but no body was found. Peter doesn't want to deal with any of it at that point and leaves. Elsewhere, Ben Reilly leaves, deciding to return or stay in exile. A few things at this time happen. Mary Jane gets sick during return to New York City, which gives a possible clue for what lies in her and Peter's life's future. Ben may have done some superheroing during the time that he was away. Teaming up with Ben against the Traveler and the villains in Ravencroft brings Peter back to sanity. While Peter Parker is weighed down by the continuity of being Spider-Man, Ben has still the happy, fresh attitude that first attracted readers to Spider-Man. We're also given another reason for the purpose of the clone's return. Traveler tells his followers, quote, "The true Spider-Man appears to be a decent and noble individual, and his genetic duplicate is also intriguing." End quote. Confusing. All in all, that's what happened. The clone was reintroduced into the Spider-Universe, Mary Jane was coming back to Peter, new villains were introduced, Peter slowly started to come back from the brink of madness, the books were reordered. Amazing Spider-Man and Spectacular Spider-Man will deal with Peter Parker. Web of Spider-Man and Spider-Man will focus on Ben Reilly. The concept of clones wasn't going to go away. Entry 2. The Scarlet Spider. The narrations will deal with the focus and concept of Ben Reilly, but some reference will be given to Peter Parker as well. The comics featuring Peter Parker was a 4-part story arc. Back from the Edge. Amazing Spider-Man issues 395 and 96. Spectacular Spider-Man issues 218 and 19. These basically ties up the theme of Spider-Man brooding and agony. Chapter 1 has Spider-Man visiting his childhood home and seeing visions of his past, denying them as problems of Peter Parker. He considers himself to be Spider-Man. only Spider-Man. Such denial is just a bad idea, then as is now. After some escapades, Spider-Man teams up with Daredevil, who's had some bad writing of his own. Peter goes to Matt and Murdock because of their old friendship and possibly because he thinks Daredevil can help him get out of the rut that he's in. At the time, Daredevil got rid of his alter ego Matt Murdock, as Daredevil tells Spider-Man to get rid of his own alter ego Peter Parker. Quote, "Kill Peter Parker. Now, bury him deep in the ground and forget he ever existed." End quote. Later on, a lot of readers felt that should have happened to Ben Reilly and the concept of the Clone Saga. Chapter 3 finishes with Spider-Man knocked out after being poisoned. In the conclusion of Back from the Edge, there's a search in the hope that they'll be able to get an antidote for the poison in Spider-Man's body. The near-death experience gives Peter an urge to live, but the remedy is proven to be fake. Peter is dying. In the comics featuring Ben Reilly, The Exile Returns, Web of Spider-Man, these have 1 and 3 of the story. Issues 118 and 19, Spider-Man Parts 2 and 4, Issues 52 and 53. Web of Spider-Man issue 118 opens up with Ben still trying to decide whether to stay or leave. After witnessing a crime, he knows that he just can't abandon everything. He tries to visit Aunt May once more, but Betty Brant is there, which has Ben thinking about all that he's missed out on over the years. Ben even visits the warehouse where Spider-Man was born, the place where Peter Parker confronted the burglar who killed Uncle Ben because Peter was too reckless to stop him. Ben later goes to the Brooklyn Bridge, where the love of Peter's life died by the Green Goblin. He notices a woman attempting to jump off and saves her. Leaving the woman at the hospital, Ben realizes that the city needs him and that there needs to be someone to protect the innocent. Hearing about Venom, wondering why Peter never stopped him years ago, he decides to go after him, unaware of the agreement that Parker and Brock made. A later panel shows Ben's apartment and him deciding to become a hero. Not wanting to jeopardize Parker's identity, Ben comes up with a new costume, a red spandex outfit with a sweatshirt with a spider design on it. Chronologically, he would not be called the Scarlet Spider until the next issue. It all starts there. Ben Reilly, the new Scarlet Spider, first appeared there and will go after one of Spider-Man's deadliest villains, Venom. The said fight took up a good portion of the Exile Return story. At first, Venom easily defeated the Scarlet Spider. As a result, this caused Ben to rethink methods of fighting and come up with some of his own inventions. Venom wasn't one of the most dangerous villains Peter Parker ever faced for nothing. One invention was that there would be a signal when the Scarlet Spider was running low on web fluid, which would be ignored or reconned in future Spider-Man comics. Ben also came up with impact webbing, which would expand and envelop the target immediately, as this was mentioned during the final story arc in the Spider-Man the Animated Series. I really hate clones. And stingers, which would stop an opponent. Also something else that would later be forgotten. The Scarlet Spider went up for a rematch against Venom in Spider-Man issue 53. It was a hard-fought battle, but Scarlet won. After the fight with Venom defeated, he contemplated his possible new life, defeating a villain that even Spider-Man had trouble with. This was one of the first instances of the Scarlet Spider in battle. In Web of Spider-Man issue 119 is the first appearance of Kane, a character who would play a key part in the Clone Saga, who had a keen interest in the Scarlet Spider. Kane had a particular way of killing or incapacitating his opponents, using his hands to scar the faces of his victims, the so-called Hand of Kane. Spider-Man issue 53 had a bit more of Kane and his intentions towards Ben Reilly, deciding not to do much more for the moment. The issue also speaks of a police officer in Salt Lake City, Utah, on the search for an elusive serial killer who leaves strange marks on his victims' faces. This is now the Web of Death arc. Amazing Spider-Man issues 397 and 98, chapters 1 and 3 of Web of Death, Spectacular Spider-Man issues 220 and 21. Chapters 2 and 4 of Web of Death starts with Kane watching Spider-Man while he's web-lining through the city. The impression is that Kane is just as interested in Spider-Man as he is in the Scarlet Spider. Peter is still affected by the poison from Back from the Edge arc. Spider-Man is slowly dying and is unsure of what to do next. Added to this, he's having flashbacks of himself in a tube container, similar to the circumstances of when the clone was created. Taken aback by the visions, Dr. Octopus appears. Octavius, noticing something is wrong with Spider-Man, leaves. Later on, both fight, with the issue ending with Spider-Man unmasked. Spectacular Spider-Man issue 220 is an extremely important issue. Octavius is trying to save Spider-Man. He would want the ultimate satisfaction of killing Spider-Man, not to be robbed of that by poison. Kane is still watching those who are important to Spider-Man. Eyeing Mary Jane, he wonders, quote, "I truly wish I could guarantee your survival. Alas, I cannot." End quote. Eventually, finally, the both of them, Peter and Mary Jane, are reunited. Peter knows that Octavius' cure didn't work, and before he has a chance to tell her, she lets him know that they're going to have a baby. Web of Death Part 3 continues with Peter still reeling from the poison, but decides to go out to dinner with Mary Jane, and they have a chance encounter with Detective Jacob Raven, the same detective who was on the trail of the murderer from Salt Lake City. The dinner is further interrupted when Peter notices Octavius. They begin to fight when Dr. Octopus reveals that he found a real cure for the poison. Peter takes the antidote and starts to feel somewhat better before collapsing and apparently dies. Web of Death Part 4 proclaimed, "One shall die." After having a near-death experience, he comes back to life. Wondering why Dr. Octopus would save him, police appear. Apparently Stunner, Dr. Octopus's henchwoman, had them come in on cue to cover him. He wanted Spider-Man at his absolute best the next time they fought. Peter returns home to Mary Jane, where they spend some time together. Meanwhile, Kane attacks Octopus on his route to prison. Kane proclaims that he has no bad intentions toward Dr. Octopus, but for unknown reasons says Octavius must die. Kane kills Dr. Octopus. What happened so far had Kane being somewhat psychic. With Part 1 has Spider-Man unmasked, Part 2 showed Mary Jane being pregnant, Part 3 showed Peter nearly dying, and Part 4 has one of Spider-Man's most classic villains, Dr. Octopus, being killed by the mysterious Kane. The comic books featuring Ben Reilly was the Web of Life arc. Spider-Man issues 120 and 121, chapters 1 and 3 of Web of Life, Spider-Man issues 54 and 55, chapters 2 and 4 of Web of Life. Web of Life starts with a Scarlet Spider adjusting to the life of a superhero, ending a battle with Tombstone. In another location, the new character, Grim Hunter, son of the late Kraven the Hunter, is planning revenge on Spider-Man. Kane continues to watch Scarlet Spider and we learn more about the character's intentions, remarking that spiders are nearby one another. It's remarked that all Kane knows is sadness, quote, "of what has been and what is to come." End quote. And there's a vision of Mary Jane fleeing from something before being killed. Scarlet Spider visits his, or confusingly Peter's, former love, Betty Brant. Wanting to put out a heroic public image with reporters, and even though both of them try to remain focused, Ben notices the interest between the both of them. Soon after Scarlet leaves Betty, Grim Hunter arrives following his scent. Part 2 starts with the Scarlet Spider sneaking into the Daily Bugle to find reporter Ken Ellis, the one who actually gave him the name of the Scarlet Spider. Reilly isn't personally fond of the name and wants to find the person responsible for it. Scarlet doesn't find Ellis, but he encounters J. Jonah Jameson for the first time. Ben is getting to adjust very well with his place here, and the encounters with Betty and Jonah have him desiring more. An important scene has Peter unconscious from the poison. Ben is sleeping and Kane is just watching. Kane shows pain as both Peter and Ben share a similar dream. Visions of a laboratory, Miles Warren, and the Jackal. Ben wakes up from the dream and calls his only friend, Seward Trainer. Ben worries that he's going mad and Seward decides to head to New York. Scarlet visits Betty once more as they hold each other. Grim Hunter prevents anything more from happening, but Grim notices that Ben isn't the one he's looking for, then leaves. Detective Raven contacts the New York Police Department, revealing that the murderer he's looking for is also responsible for the death of his partner. Web of Life Part 3 and Web of Spider-Man issue 121. Kane stops a robbery showing no mercy to anyone, thief or victim. Raven finds a match for the fingerprints found at the scene of a crime and decides to look for the person responsible. Scarlet heads to Peter's home, hoping to get to him before the Grim Hunter. Finding Kane instead, Ben is easily defeated by the mysterious villain. He's nearly killed by Kane. Part 4 starts with the Scarlet Spider trying to recover as Kane and the Grim Hunter fight. During the fight, Kane's thoughts show that the Grim Hunter cannot be allowed to interfere with anything he's trying to do. Quote, "He must die, as they must all." Scarlet leaves after not being able to locate Peter or Mary Jane, and he runs into Seward Trainer. Seward wants Ben to come back to his lab to finish some tests that they started some time ago, citing Ben's health as a reason. Ben refuses, saying Kane is killing and needs to be stopped. Scarlet tracks Kane and the Grim Hunter to Central Park, but during the battle, Ben loses both of them. Kane later kills the Grim Hunter.